Tell you who else is rolling. The Detroit Tigers, offensively, defensively, getting it done. Kind of the maestro here, AJ Hinch, which it's amazing looking at just his path, right? I don't think anybody's had this path. We talk about a major league ball player, involved in the personnel side as well when he's first getting started. Manager, obviously we know what happened. Some of his other stops, controversial. And then here with the Detroit Tigers. So what can you tell us about AJ Hinch, just kind of having that unique background of personnel playing and coaching, and then, of course, all the controversy and navigating that, and now getting this Tigers team ready to play baseball?
Yeah, well, first of all, the diversity of that experience, there's no way it's not valuable in terms of a manager putting on the uniform, doing the thing that the players are doing. It's the ultimate, the CEOs that do every level of the job. This is like kind of, along those lines. He's been on seen a lot of the views throughout the whole scale of this progression into manager, and now is in a position to leverage them most in this manager position. So I think there's no way it's not helping him directly right here. And I will say one thing, like regardless of context or circumstance, the Detroit Tigers feel like a different team in this kind of era of the Detroit Tigers. And right now there's not too many ways you can claim that there are, 5 better teams in the Tigers right now. You don't want to put them at number 1, even though record-wise, it's kind of right there at the top of the whole league, not just their side of the league. But the Tigers have a different feel to them without playing, star-driven baseball. They have a lot of really good players, as we'll get through here, and they have a true legitimate star and ace in Tariq Skubal, but there's contributions from a really equally distributed part of the roster here and from some names that you wouldn't expect to be seeing along with the top names in baseball. So really, really good team baseball, it feels like. They go first to third really well. They do really good job outfield positioning too, matching up in the bullpen. I think, if you look back at the Astros during those years, right, a lot of the reasons they were good, they would play these odds often. They were known as a team to default to a lot of these kind of, if the percentage dictates that you should do this in this situation, they were among the teams, the Rays, a lot of other teams have, integrated this, but they were kind of at the forefront of those things back when it was, they still had the competitive edge and competitive advantage on it. And I think, therefore, they do the positioning, the matchups, the in-game decisions. I think they do those at a more optimized level because they're just, integrated and prepared on that front. And then I saw something, most 2 outs, like runners in scoring production with 2 outs is like a component to this too. So just overall playing really good team baseball on different sides of it without really being an elite defensive team. I think they're more middle of the pack there, but top offense, top pitching in baseball, or top 5, no matter which side you look at it. And that's a pretty good recipe for winning as well.
We talked off air, and you mentioned you touched on a little bit, the analytics to measure a manager is such an intangible thing, but there's certain situations that you can retroactively go back and look and say, hey, did we optimize or improve our chance to be successful in this situation?
Sure. And that's you're getting at the thesis of every post-game conversation with the front office that a manager has. Like, so if you have a good process where there's accountability and just like, hey, what happened here? Everybody's so locked in that they're going to be able to point at, you went with this lefty, you went with this matchup here, even though the matchup optimizer dictates that we should have gone here. And that's where the manager can kick in on the other side, be like, yeah, but I'm in the clubhouse with him. Like he's, less available today. The confidence isn't there. Needed a day, needed 2 days. This guy feels better. Like, it depends. There's a really fine line between playing it completely subjectively and playing it by the odds. And I think the good managers toe both, even though from an accountability standpoint, your front office and your analytics group is going to be like, well, why didn't they do this in this scenario? That was a clear this. If we prepared for it in the advance meeting and it's on the sheet or it's on the iPad, but sometimes there's flow of the game things that are, you can't be tone deaf to your clubhouse and to the rest of your guys either. And front office and managers don't always and aren't always in sync. That's why I talked about the benefit of Mike Hazen and Torey Lovello always being in sync. That's important in this dynamic as well, because you're going to get checked or you're going to get cross-referenced by your entire game preparation team, advanced scouting and analytics, and then the the guys in the room post game that need to discuss personnel decisions post game, things like that. The most common thing that comes up is like, hey, why'd you go here or why'd you go there? And the manager kind of has to have a justification as to each of those beyond just like, oh, it just felt right in the moment. And I think that the Tigers have this a lot. They have a manager who has a high capacity to navigate good teams and playing high level baseball. So I think you're seeing some returns from that.
And maybe that's where the fact that he was a major league player, so he knows what major league players are thinking. He was a front office guy, so he knows what the front office view of the situation is. And then, of course, he's sitting in the manager's seat. So I guess that those situations you're talking about, those meetings and those, when you walk through the thought process, he can sit in every seat, right? The manager, the front office guy, and the player, and have a personal, kind of reference point.
Yeah. The manager's so interesting to me, and I don't mean to get off track here, but the manager is a slept-on position in baseball, in my opinion, in terms of how wide the range of not only responsibilities, but talents and kind of places, things you need to be good and well and shored up in. And it's kind of like the GM in that you can't really not know what you're talking about in any room that you're in. And that's a lot of range, even though some guys have strengths in terms of the player that they were or how long they've been a manager or the analytical side. You still have to show the full range because it's still so human. You still have to be the forward face, the skipper of that clubhouse with every single member of that clubhouse, player and staff. And so it always impressed me as to how difficult that job was, especially in the ones that are hot seats that you always have to be good, because it takes a lot of different things to be really good in that position and just prepared on all fronts. And I just wanted to take a second to appreciate the managers and the jobs that they have to do, because I watch a lot of guys in their progressions into it, coaches now that are aspiring managers later. And I got to think it's kind of like a director on a movie set. You have to know everything. You have to be good at everything. If you can connect right to a player, that's seemingly the thing that I've seen move the needle most. But you also have to be accountable to your GM and to your ownership group. And that's a whole different conversation that you have to regularly have. And then you have to go and put on a straight face to the media and explain all your decisions in a way that no other of those positions have to be accountable for. So shout out to the managers, man. And it's a hard gig and it's hard to be good at it. And that's why the ones that are good at it, they stick around for a while and teams hold on tight. And even if you've navigated some controversies, the value of that thing is such that you'll get another chance at it if you kind of go through the process. And
you got to wear the uniform, right? It's not that slimming. You can't wear the nice suit or the polo, to make you look a little thinner.
That's right.
Switching gears now to the personnel side.
Yep.
Where you came up. Spencer Torkelson is an interesting one to me. Right, first baseman. A lot of discussion, I remember at the time, about that profile going where he went in the first round. You think of an Andrew Vaughn for Chicago White Sox. Hasn't worked out yet. Maybe looking how Torkelson was looking before. Now they're starting to see some of the reason they took him at that spot. Walk me through not just Torkelson, the player, but kind of that profile and how you look at it and how other people in your seat have looked at that position.
My position on first base has evolved and also it's ping-ponged in different directions. At first, I knew it's where I thought you had to be kind of equally distributed, good and defensively and good offensively. My evolution taught me you need to get offense from the first base position, period. There's only so many places you can get true offensive players, and first base is a place you need to get offensive production out of. That said, it's also the most consequential guy in the infield because he touches the ball on almost every ground out. So it's sneaky more important than you think. I remember watching Mitch Moreland back in the day, seeing how much there was a direct correlation to the rest of that infield being better because Mitch Moreland was really good, not only ground balls, but as a first base receiver. So I think that gets underrated in the game. I think teams are doing a better job of almost like we grade catcher receiving. You're grading first base receiving.
Yep.
Because if you look at some of these plays, they're really difficult plays that first baseman will bail out, another player on, and that moves the needle too. The problem is those two things don't always travel together, offensive ability and defensive ability at first base, because usually those guys are playing shortstop, third base, up the middle. But there's a lot of first basemen that start, more up the middle. And I think the right first baseman, you can be an excellent right first baseman and right anything and be fully productive. I think where it shifts is that if you look at it from a free agency standpoint, you just have more options that are right first base profile in either major league free agency or minor league free agency, right? And I think Pete Alonso ran into this a little bit in free agency this year, where it's just not a profile that teams regularly go out and stretch for. It was the reason Torkelson going 1 as a right first baseman was even controversial at all, right? And I don't think it was, and it's what I'll circle all the way back to with Torkelson, because I watched him in college for a series against Cal, Andrew Vaughn versus Spencer Torkelson. There were some other good players in that series playing as well. But he was the most dominant player in college right there. It was a clear number 1 selection. You can kind of, the way it's played out after looks different, but at the moment there wasn't much wiggle room in who's getting selected at the top here. And it just puts a lot of pressure on the bat being really, really good. But I also think what you see here is, even for an advanced college player, the progression into the big leagues is not just like you show up and you just, like, hitting in the big leagues is hard as shit. And sometimes it takes a little longer to figure it out. And sometimes it's worth the wait to figure it out. Like I think the Tigers are seeing here with Torkelson, because I think if you go back to his collegiate stuff, just flashing by him, it's stupid numbers in that 1 year where he had to be really good. So, and he was really good defensively too, because he was a third baseman playing first base, transitioning over. So I have no hate at all for the right first baseman. I just understand in the roster construction phase, it's not priority 1. But Torkelson, it wasn't like it was expected that somebody else was going to be number 2 pick and that he would be the number 1 pick. That's how dominant he was at that time. And that's how it turned out.
Well, look, Torkelson, I don't think he'll ever close that gap, but at least it's not as profound as it looked last year, a couple years ago. So good on Spencer Torkelson getting together. We think of big names on this Tigers team. There's not a ton of them, but obviously Javi Baez, who we've talked about on this show, is one of those. Another one who is having a little bit of a resurgence here, Gleyber Torres, one of the better free agent signings of the offseason. What have you noticed from Torres? With Baez, it's clear, right? 'Cause changing positions. There's a lot, and the swing decisions, the whole thing we talked about. With Torres, what's allowing him to have more success here in maybe a lesser spotlight with the Tigers?
I think Gleyber Torres has always been a really good hitter, a really good player overall, and I think the Tigers, he's less lost in that lineup of the Yankees, and less, a little less microscope. And I'm not knocking, Gleyber Torres for that at all. I think it's just a little bit of a relief of pressure that every night, every at-bat, everything getting magnified isn't necessarily the case with the Detroit fan base. And that can be freeing for a player, I imagine, to just play with, without that microscope. And there are pockets in your career where you're ready for that microscope. Gleyber had to come up in that. And that's a whole other, he was traded in the Chapman deal, I think, from the Cubs.
Yep.
And it kind of had to come up as a prospect through that Yankee. And other guys have done it, and it fits, and he was really good for them. And I always remember seeing Gleyber Torres' production numbers as you're looking at the Yankees if you match up with them in a trade, and it was always a guy that you're like, yeah, I'll take that if I can get it. If in a return we can get Gleyber Torres, that's offense at either the shortstop, third base, and second base positions. I think second base is probably the one he's best suited to. But you're looking at it right now. I mean, he's one of the better hitters in the league, one of the better contributors in the league right now. The numbers aren't eye-popping, but I think in that clubhouse and on that team, he's moving the needle a lot. And a lot of these bar graphs are all the way to the right. Squared up percentage, chase percentage, whiff percentage, and he's just not striking out at all.
That's an interesting trade to revisit there. When you talk about the Chapman for Torres, kind of reminds me of Yugi Urbina for
Adrian Gonzalez.
For Adrian Gonzalez.
Yeah.
Because you can't say either side lost,
Nope.
right? For what they were trying to accomplish in the trade.
Context matters.
So,
Yeah.
I'd like to see that when two teams, we talk about so many times one team just looking terrible and the other team, winning huge.
Right.
Sometimes they both win, right? Now with Gleyber Torres having some success in a new spot, but obviously paid his dues there with the Yankees.
And that trades have their waves of when it values or impacts you the most. And then sometimes, that prospect goes on to be an established big leaguer for a long time at a position that you would probably eventually end up needing. But in that moment, Aroldis Chapman in that ninth inning, when your team is there, it's kind of hard. I would rather go for it and, try to win. That's winning a World Series, man, or having a shot at it. if you have it, you take it. Yeah. And I'll never credit a GM for being overly aggressive on that side.
And the Chicago Cubs at that point, I mean, the ultimate example of you gotta go get it because it doesn't happen every single year. Reese Olson, want to talk about his profile, and really a lot of these Tiger pitchers we're going to talk about have similar strengths and weaknesses, at least according to their production this year on Baseball Savant and some of the pitch mix. With Olson, high school kid, 13th rounder out of Gainesville, Georgia, 25 years old, one of the unluckiest pitchers in the game as far as run support earlier in his career. I know you've seen that dynamic with the Marlins where you had pitchers that were just throwing gems and not necessarily getting the support. Before we even get to his arsenal and what he's been doing effectively, being a pitcher that's losing games when you're having quality starts consistently, how does that affect their mentality? Like, how do you keep guys focused on what they're doing well when they're having these heartbreaking losses and great performances?
I think in this particular case, it'll go back to like a good manager. Like a manager can convey the message that like, hey, we didn't win tonight. You know, it didn't break our way, but if we replicate what you just did tonight over however many 25 starts, like it's going to happen good more than it's going to happen bad. And so that manager, or even that GM in those rooms, like, cause sometimes like the GM and manager are working in sync with each other and be like, hey, our numbers can see through the loss or the higher ERA tonight. Or, you know, manager could say things like, hey, could have taken you out a little earlier here. Could have like left you in that spot, this, that. But you can set the tone on like, keep going, see through this. But some guys, players still have to be accountable to each other too. And players see things more like loss, ERA, bump, you know, like you still want to have good numbers outwardly. But it doesn't inspire confidence when you're executing and losing. That's tough, right? But I think that's where scoring runs offensively just kind of bails you out of all of that. Right? Like it's hard to be a team that just wins on margins and small margins. That's less sustainable. So the offensive teams like the Tigers right now, they're scoring runs at a rate at the top level of the league. So kind of takes a lot of the pressure off the pitcher. Your pitching still has to be good, but you kind of pitch differently. You pitch more aggressively. You pitch more confidently with a lead. It's a whole different dynamic. But you lose a lot of games, you gain an appreciation for the win. And so that's what they're experiencing now. So he's leveraging, you know, all those lessons of losing those games. Now you're on a good team with the offense to get you runs and win games. And now you pitch with a little more confidence. And now your stuff gets to show up. Like he's in the 96th percentile in off-speed run value and 88th percentile in whiffs overall, which is a lot of it is that changeup that he throws a lot. But yeah, a guy that's carrying him. I think he's second in WAR for pitchers on that roster. And, you know, I don't know. We can talk all day on Skubal as well. Like, there's got to be some osmosis effect to watching that guy work, especially with a changeup. Like, he uses that changeup a lot. And you're pitching after Skubal, like, or around him. I don't know. There's got to be some osmosis effect there.
We're seeing a lot of different backgrounds for these pitchers. So, you know, Skubal, college pitcher, didn't pitch that great in college, and then becomes what he is now. You look at Olson, 13th round high school pitcher, right? And then, you know, you talk about Mize, number 1 overall pick out of Auburn, you know, Jackson Jobe. There's different kinds of players in this staff. Before we even get off Olson, because I'm curious about this, the 13th round, 12th round, 14th round high school player.
Yep.
I don't know if that changes now in the NIL era with guys having opportunities to go to college and make money. Just how does a pitcher like this, who is I'm sure he was showing something in high school that allowed him to get drafted in the first place. How does he go in the 13th round and then become what he is now as a 25-year-old?
The simplest way I could put it is that, like, not all timeline, the player development timelines are different. There are different times when a player is ready to be showcased for his capitalization moment, the draft, or internationally for his signing period. Some players like find their strides later, 18, 19, 23, 27. Some guys find it. Rich Hill would find it later in his mid-30s. Nick Martinez in his early 30s. Like, these things, if you believe in player development, you know about it, you know that there's a wide range of outcomes. Juan Soto shoots right there. Bobby Witt shoots right there. Not everybody takes that path. And there's up, down, up, down. And to me, it's the guys who obsess in the off seasons nowadays, that go and figure out their arsenal, that go and work in sync with their front office to go find like the right pitch mix and grip that works for them. If you believe in player development, it's more like, okay, yeah, it makes sense why maybe you weren't ready out of high school and you get selected in the 13th round. That's why you see a lot of college guys get selected twice, somewhere out of high school and then maybe earlier in college. And I think that means they flashed something that's signable, but maybe they were committed to a big time Power 4 conference. So a 13th round pick with a $75K bonus wasn't going to move the needle too much. So you go to college, but for some kids, that $75,000 and that 13th pick is all you wanted to do: play professional baseball and get right into it. Your family needs that money. Every situation is highly, highly different. So I don't know the mechanics of what led him to being in the 13th round, almost the 400th pick overall in 2018. But I've just watched a lot of these happen in the draft room where a lot of arms look interesting. But everybody has a story. Everybody's like, yeah, didn't start playing baseball until now, has been playing third base up until now. Now he's starting to pitch. I can't point to one reason why he slides, but guys slide. And then just thinking about it as myself, yourself, you get better with age. I don't think anything I did at 17, 18, 19, 20, physically maybe, but mentally and emotionally.
I can think of a couple things.
Yeah, no, but mentally, emotionally, I'd rather have the wisdom of where I'm at now to make decisions than so young then. And player development is tough, man. It's tough to get to the big leagues, and it's even tougher to stay. And so when guys do it from these middle ranges, that just shows scouting is hard too. Like, it's hard to get these things right at such a long distance. You know what I mean?
Well, look, it's interesting because the next guy we're going to talk about was the first overall pick, but similar story. It was a winding road, a lot of injuries to get to the point where he is looking productive. I mean, not unlike Torkelson, as far as it took a while to see why he was the number one overall pick, at least consistently. He's had injuries. He's actually injured right now. Sounds like it's not serious with a hamstring strain. But, Casey Mize, first overall pick out of Auburn. Look at the Savant page, similar here to Olson in terms of the fastball lower in the profile, the off speed, really doing some work. So, what do you see with Mize and why he's able to be so effective?
I think to the draft question of Casey Mize, another one with Torkelson where you get why he gets selected first round. Big physical right-handed starter with a bulk of innings build up at Auburn. And it's kind of hard to stare that right in the face and be like, nah, this guy that's been dominating the SEC and just showing he's the best pitcher in college baseball with physicality, with stuff. Makes total sense why he was taken 1-1 that year. Another case, the big leagues, it's not an upward trajectory right into it. You get hurt. Pitchers have this injury thing, which is a whole other thing they have to navigate, that position players have to navigate it too, but I see a higher bounce back rate from almost any injury with position players than shoulder injury, for example. Shoulder injuries derail more pitching careers than I've ever seen. It's to the point where you'll see an elbow and you'll know he has Tommy John, and you'll know there's a bounce back rate to this that you're comfortable with. Shoulders is more opaque. There's more going on in the shoulder, that socket, that joint, cartilage, slap tears, rotator cuff, kind of where your pec meets your shoulder and on the other side as well, lat stuff. It's just, there's a lot of stuff that they deal with, and it complicates the journey and the assessment overall. But again, player development, you stick it out and you bet that there's a reason that this should work. And if it's in the strike zone, it does. And then for me, it's not so much the off speed with him, it's the breaking ball, like the value, 98th percentile breaking ball run value. That to me means that his his breaking balls, it's more of a slurve, slider mix. I think it's just a lethal pitch in baseball right now. He can go to it any pitch, any count. True pitchability of a starting pitcher. Throws enough strikes to not get into walk trouble. After a while, you see how that could play over 25, 30 starts or a big league season, health dependent. But I like to see the guys drafted high make it as much as I see the guys in the mid rounds, because it's not a no pressure situation to make it as a number one overall pick. Actually, you can make the argument that it goes in the other direction too.
And look, you see the fortunes of this franchise kind of rising with these guys. Once they've gotten right, the Torkelsons, the Mize, we'll see on Jackson Jobe. Now you see Riley Green, right? You see when those guys start performing, everything else looks a lot better, right?
Rising tide.
So switching to another pitcher here who's more of a veteran, 35-year-old righty, Tommy Kahnle from Lynn University in Boca, our neck of the woods. Spent a lot of time with the Yankees. Another guy breaking ball and off speed there with Tommy. So what do you see with this? He's a young man to us at 35, but this veteran, what he's able to get done.
Awesome career that he's had, and right now he's 84% changeup. Like that's to 15% fastball right now, and the sliders like kind of doesn't really use it much. But the fact that shows that that's an 80 pitch in baseball, or a top of the scale level pitch that you know it's coming, and you still like he throws something else just enough to get you off of it. But it's devastating right now, and he gets that ball on the ground at a 90th percentile clip. He's like prevents hard contact on the bottom side of the barrel, almost leads the league in average exit velocity, and it's that pitch, that changeup is in the 99th percentile in pitch value in baseball, and you know it's coming. You remember Koji Uehara?
Yep.
Remember that name?
Yep.
Saved a lot of games with the Red Sox back in that 2013 run. Koji Uehara was throwing 84-mile-an-hour fastballs and was just 70% splitter. You know it's coming, and you still can't do much with it because there's a deception factor. There's a comfort. In this case, I think it's movement. It's just a sick movement pitch. It's hard to pick up. And he throws a fastball 15%, just enough to keep you honest or establish an early strike early in the count. But then it's bread and butter changeup. And that's hard to pitch like that. Ask any reliever. Like they have to pitch with a complementary arsenal. But this guy does it with heavy changeup usage. And it's dope. It's cool to watch.